So welcome to the third in our series of webinars with Johanna Rothman. We love Johanna at Transparent Choice. She's really smart. She has written books on anything beginning with P that needs managing, like a project or a portfolio or a program, or even people for that matter. And we always seem to have really good interactions on these webinars. Funnily enough, we were joking about it just before we kicked off here, that we have slightly different views of what best practice looks like, and that usually works really well in these webinars. So hopefully you're going to get something great out of this one. Do go back and watch the other two. As I said, this is the third in the series on managing your project portfolio. This is based on one of Johanna's books. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. She'll sting you at the end on that one. But it's based on one of Johanna's books, and it's definitely worth getting hold of a copy and taking a look through there. So, so Johanna, I'm going to hand over to you without further ado. And here we go.
All right. Thank you so much, Stuart. By the way, it's always a blast when I talk with you. Okay. So in the very first webinar, I talked about that the line that says what we're not going to do, the unstaffed work. And we talked a little bit about what you might look at for ways to visualize the project portfolio. So what I would like you to do in this webinar, you, the listeners and the visualizers, the people who are watch the webinar later, is to think about what ways do you need to visualize the project portfolio. Often, organizations need to see this, what might happen over time as a calendar view. Some people need to see what's actually going on in the organization right now. And so your job as a person managing the project portfolio or thinking about it is to figure out what people need to see. So my question is, what kind of work do you have? We all have project work, but we also have time-based work. And part of the time-based work is the periodic work. So every 2 weeks you generate a report. Every month you generate a revenue report. You generate sales reports. I think of periodic work as reporting, but maybe your periodic work is different. And then there's ongoing work. The more products you have, the more support you will have. Not because your products are not good, but because products don't always do what the customer wants them to do. So you do a little maintenance, you do a little enhancement, you have to respond to the support people. There's support work. And then there's ad hoc work. I don't know about you, I find that email is a huge generator of ad hoc work in my company. Somebody sends me an email and all of a sudden I have work to do. So the more you need to think about all the different kinds of work. In addition, we have intent-based work, such as management work. So making the decision about the project portfolio is management work that you might do on a periodic basis. But if you don't do it, you have management debt. So think about the kind of work that you have that you might want to show in the project portfolio.
And this is really good because so I had a conversation with somebody. It was a LinkedIn conversation, and the guy was sort of saying, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. The biggest problem that we have with people requesting projects is, they always want to squeeze out the project management component of the project. And, because they're trying to get the cost down, they're trying to okay, fine. And I turned around to him and said, well, great. Think about the portfolio. At the portfolio level, if you're not paying attention to managing that portfolio, proactively managing what's in it and the schedules and the resources and everything else, that's like launching a project with no project manager. And it's a direct analogy. And you would never, as project management professionals, we would never dream of launching a project without adequate project management. I mean, it never happens. Okay, occasionally it happens, but it should never happen, right? And it applies at the portfolio level as well. You just shouldn't be doing it if you don't have adequate control, management work, if you like, overseeing that portfolio. So I like this. This is good.
Yeah, I mean, and I could go on about the kinds of project managers. Maybe we'll do that in another webinar. But
There you go.
every project needs some form of management, and the project portfolio needs management. It needs nurturing and guidance and steering, all that kind of good stuff. So I think of 3 kinds of projects. And the first one is to keep the lights on, right? You need to keep doing the stuff you're doing, right? You need to keep supporting your customers. You need to keep everything going for the organization. This is the status quo. Now, you will also have projects that grow the business as it stands now. You have a great idea for product A, you kick off a project for it, it grows the business. You have more customers in that area. Maybe you have a new vertical, maybe you have more capability, but you're growing your current business. Now, the other kind of project is the transforming the business project. And if I knew how to tell you what would transform your business, I would tell you, but I don't know. So those are often the highly risky, potentially highly rewarding projects. And I don't know how to tell you which ones they are. That's, and if you look across the organization, right, if you are in IT, I think of software, right? Stuart, you do other kinds of projects. IT organizations often have their stuff for finance and their stuff for HR, and then there's stuff for the website. And the website might transform the business, and maybe it's the thing for HR that transforms the business. I don't know. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, I love the graphic, the buckets, right? And we talk about buckets all the time. And there are actually several ways to create buckets. This is one of the most common and one of the most well-established and one of the most respected ways of doing it. So I'm not surprised at all to see it in one of your slide decks. So there's this idea of keep the lights on, grow the business, transform the business. And one of the really important things here is that the selection criteria for projects in those 3 categories are going to be different. Right, so we sometimes see customers try and manage all of their project selection process, right? What projects should we do in one bucket with one set of criteria? You cannot do that successfully, right? You'll get an answer, but is it going to be an answer that people like and people buy into and that actually works for the business? No, it's not. So you have to create buckets, whether it's keep the lights on, grow the business, transform. Some people will break it down by division. Mm-hmm. Right? So they'll say, this division, that's their portfolio, and this division, that's their portfolio. I would suggest if you're big enough to do that, within those divisions, you should still be breaking it down into keep the lights on, grow the business, transform the business. And the reason is because you're going to use different criteria to select those projects. So in keep the lights on, it's usually about efficiency, reliability, keeping up with the time. So maybe there's some regulation that's changed or something like that. In grow the business, it's about, what are the opportunities? Right? You're usually making slightly bigger changes, not necessarily riskier ones, but often you're making bigger changes. And it's about, not necessarily about efficiency, but it's about market growth or launching a new product or something. And transforming the business says it all. Those are the big ones. Those can be the tricky ones. It's interesting. One of the things that you end up with here is actually a portfolio of portfolios. So part of what you've got to decide is how much energy, how much resource do we put into each of these portfolios, and how much of that goes into transforming the business. And depending on what industry you're in, you're going to put lots or little. So if you're a water company, right, a water utility company, you're probably not putting a whole lot into transforming the business, but you're putting heaps into keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
But if you're, a half-crazed, sleep-deprived internet startup, then most of your resources are going into transform and grow the business.
Right.
And keeping the lights on is something that's less important. So it's important to think about, when you're organizing this management of the portfolio, what the right buckets are for your organization, whether it's by division, by organization, by service. So it could be you might have your IT budget and your plant maintenance budget, right? A bucket that you break it up. So this isn't something that, in my view at least, this isn't a decision that the PMO should just kind of draw a line and say, I'm carving the organization up this way. This is a discussion you need to have with the business, right?
Right. This is one of the reasons I really like it when the business people, right, the people at the senior managers, and even in a product line or a division, that the senior managers make the project portfolio decisions. So they might, so if we keep the lights on, it's very tempting to do shorted weighted job first, right? We talked about waste to value in the last webinar. For growth of business as it stands, it might be cost of delay. It might be business value points. And for transform the business, it might be, who are our customers? Do we have an opportunity to get to those customers in this way? And that allows you to say, well, maybe we want to look at waste. Maybe we want to look at where this product is in its life cycle. So that's one of the reasons there are all these ways to value projects in the project portfolio. So I happen to agree with you. I really want people to say, is this a keep the lights on? Is it a grow? Is it a transform? A potentially transformable project. And then we can make some decisions. So let's think about it. And that, as you said, the discussion is so critical, right?
Really is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So I showed you this particular slide, I believe the last time, maybe in the first one, where I said we have the unstaffed work and we have the calendar view. So you can see what we expect to finish in the first 3 months of the year, what we're not doing now, and what we think we might want to start when, right? Maybe. And we talked, excuse me, about the low level view of what people in the organization are doing. And depending on where you are in the project portfolio decision making, right? This might be a manager view or maybe a group manager view. And the previous slide is the organizational view. But I find that I need to understand all of the views. Mostly because I'm not a senior manager, right? So at the director level or the project portfolio level, you might need to see this view also. But the senior managers are not going to see this view. Well, probably. I really like to say, what kind of a flow do we have in the organization? How can we show that? And I happen to like a Kanban view. And Stuart, I believe that your tool has a Kanban view of this.
It certainly has, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from a client, right? This is what they did. They had a backlog of projects ready to start. They had 4 teams, and so every team was only on one project. Now, they were not totally agile, so they did incremental development, but they were not a perfect agile organization. So what they did was they had these WIP limits, work in progress limits. You can see that there is a 1 project limit in this column, 1 in this column, and 1 in this column. That's for every single team, right? So the WIP limit, work in progress, applies to every single team. And so these projects are staffed, they're going, they're hanging out, they're doing a good job. These projects, these teams, these 2 teams are working on project B. It's in final test. So that meant that while they got a lot of the work done incrementally and maybe even iteratively, they have this final test phase before they can actually go into deployment. And this project, right, Team 4 finished Project C. It's on the staging server. It's now waiting for deployment, right, because they have a separate team to do that. In the meantime, Team 4 started Project D. So you can see the flow of work through the organization. Now, this is probably not your flow of work, right? This is an example of what it could be. And now you can see that the organization has a lot of demand. That's why there are all these unstaffed projects 1, 2, and 3. Did you want to comment, Stuart?
Well, yeah, no, I'm looking at this. It's really good, and one of the things that people sometimes forget, that everybody gets kind of the Kanban view of projects that are in flight, but actually, before they're approved, before they hit that backlog, there's also kind of a workflow of project intake, project evaluation, documenting the business case, first cut, second cut, okay, it's approved, it's on the backlog, it's blessed, right? And so everybody, people very often focus on this view for obvious reasons. It's important, it's actionable, this is how we're going to track stuff. But actually, the stuff that comes before this is just as important, and you need to be able to manage that process with the same level of visibility that you have for the in-flight work.
I'm going to jump 3 slides ahead because you segued into this. I'll go back and do the others.
I did this last time as well.
No, that's why we have control. So this is one of my other clients that they create the backlog. They have ideas. Oh my goodness, they have so many ideas. They do this a little evaluation, right? Should we do this project at all? And this is a business and technology joint decision, right? They don't go anywhere without the technologists and the business agreeing on it. So there are these little gates. Now, then they do a little pre-work. Now, this is where a lot of people get a little bit of stuck. Okay, that wasn't quite English, but I think we understand. How do you do just enough pre-work to evaluate what's going on, right? To be able to commit, as opposed to doing the entire project. So this is where I find that agile approaches really help. You have a very short ranked backlog, or you time box the pre-work. You say, no more than a month. That's it. You only get a month to play around with this stuff, and then you're done. Or you have a little backlog and you say, not more than 2 weeks. Finish what's in the backlog. If you finish on day 7, even better. We can then evaluate. And so that pre-work allows you to define a roadmap for the project that you're going to work on and what success means. So you might do a 1-pager here, or a business case, or something else, right? But that's what this particular organization does. Then they do the project work, and then they have a final assessment and validation, and then they go into maintenance. And that lasts as long as the business and technology people decide it should. So are these gates? In this particular client, they aren't. So I think that gates are not bad in themselves, as long as you keep redeciding and you don't have work stuck anywhere for a long period of time. If you have projects that take you 5 years, you better do a little pre-work and make sure you really want to do them. And even if you have projects that take 3 months, 4 days of pre-work might be just enough for a 3 to 6 month project to know this is what we really want to do. It solves a business problem for us.
Yeah, and I seem to remember was it under George W. that the federal government made loads of money available to invest in infrastructure and things, and the phrase that people used was the shovel ready or the digger ready project, something like that. I forget the exact phrase. It was something like that, and that's what those things are. When you've done the pre-work, they are then digger ready. They're ready to go. And the point with projects is that, we all understand that there are phases to implementing a project, but there are also these phases to evaluating projects. You don't want, when somebody just throws the idea out, you don't want them to have to spend half a day documenting it. You want the idea down in 2 minutes. And,
right.
We have these nice little, you can define little online web forms so people can just go in and do that in 2 minutes, boom. But once you've done the quick sniff test, you might want to send it off to a senior project manager to do a quick feasibility. Do you see any roadblocks in this test. Great, that's another tick. Doesn't have to be more than a 10-minute review, right? But if you don't do it, then you find yourself further down the process, and suddenly you discover you had this roadblock that you should have spotted much earlier. So it's important to have this kind of evaluation, and it's important to have a tool. I mean, this kind of thing, if you're working with spreadsheets and all the rest of it, right now your toes are curling up, your hands are starting to shake. You probably just spilled that cup of coffee you got right before watching this webinar, because this is just terrifying. But with the right tools, this can be really slick and quick, and give you visibility and control. So, again, people sometimes get worried about this as overhead, but it is not. This is going to save you time, pain, failed projects, by doing this right the way from project idea all the way through to maintenance on the back end. And ideally there's kind of a parallel thing there where you, at some point during maintenance, you go back and you measure, did we actually get the business benefit that we thought we were going to get? Which almost nobody does, right? Everybody's wrestling with that. Nobody does that well.
Right. Makes me nuts.
But, yeah, it makes me nuts as well. We're working on some software to try and support that, but it's a tough problem. It's a tough one.
Well, it is. It is.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my tuppence on that one.
Yeah. So this is what you had talked about when I was, I believe, over here. So let's talk about a different view of projects. So I had showed you, I'm going to go back and forth between slides. I hope that people are okay with this. I talked about what people were doing, right? Because that helps a manager understand where are people assigned, what are they doing, what do we expect them to do? And then this particular flow is a slightly different flow. So you have project teams that are working on different levels of stories. And sometimes you see that, let me walk through it actually from the back end of the Kanban, because it's actually easier to see. Some stuff gets done. We have no WIP limit, no work in progress limit undone. We want everything to get done. We do have a WIP limit, a work in progress limit of final check. So often there are some kind of releasing mechanisms, or not just system tests, but maybe final test, maybe check with a customer. There's any number of things like that. And the reason, at least for me, to keep the WIP limits low is that we have a steady stream of value flowing through the Kanban from left to right. So if I keep the WIP limits low, I don't have a lot of work as inventory, right? I don't have, in lean terms, it's waste. So I might have up to 2 things in system tests. In development and unit test, I have up to 2 things. This particular project only has 1, right? The team has decided that they're working on this one. And in review stories, that's where people might say, we have several stories we might have in review at any given time. Only 2 of them can go into dev and unit tests. So we have a continuous flow through the organization. But how did we get to review stories? We have ready. So if these 3 teams, or I should say these 3 projects, are all part of a program, which I'm, you and I know a lot about programs, one larger deliverable with one piece of business value, but you might have several projects in there. You can see where the entire program is in this particular flow. So this is not the by person flow, this is by the project flow. And I have found that some of my clients really like to see this. This is a low level view again, not the high level view. Is it okay if I continue?
Yeah, it is. I have one quick question on this.
Yeah.
So this is fabulous if you are an agile shop, right? If you're working in agile, how do you translate this for somebody who maybe they're doing a large, they're building a bridge, right? You can't build part of the bridge mid-river before you built the rest, that kind of thing.
Right. So bridges are very different construction than buildings. So in buildings, You actually can do rooms and floors and elevators, and you have many more components you can put together. But I believe you have to start with the ends and then work towards the middle.
Right. So what's the equivalent of a user story? Because you've got this broken down by stories.
So that would be, what kind of value do you want to work by? In software, we work by stories. But in a bridge, you would work by the ends and then the footings and then whatever you do to connect the footings and probably measurements along the way to make sure you're going to meet in the middle and you don't have a little jig in the bridge, right? So all of those are units of value. So it's so interesting. In a hard product, it's a lot easier to see earned value, especially in something like a bridge, right? You got footings. You got, what do they call it on the ends of on the two ends?
I honestly have no idea.
Okay.
Land, terra firma is on the top
Okay.
of the bridge.
All right. So the entrances, okay?
Yeah.
When you have the footings for the entrances and the actual support for the road, right? I bet that those are two different kinds of value. So if you think about value in what's ready, and then value here and value, how do you move from the ideas we have to deliverables?
And so this is a way, independent of the phasing of a project or program, to show and to report on value delivery.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit like milestones being met, but it's not milestones in the project milestone sense. It's value milestones that are being delivered.
Yes.
Right. Good.
Yeah. And then sometimes there are projects across the organization. So I have a small client that does lots and lots of research kinds of projects, and they focus on electrical engineering projects. But some of their EE projects need software, and some of those software projects need mechanical. So they have width limits for each of these columns, and then that allows them to do these projects and know we need EE people here, EE teams, we need software teams here, we need ME teams here, and these teams can be as small as 2 or 3 people, right? Because there are not a lot of mechanical engineering. There's a little bit more software. Primarily, they're doubling this particular client. So it's really interesting to see how they look at their projects across the organization. And what I would like everyone to take away from this is that there is no one way to see your work in progress, but you cannot manage the project portfolio without understanding where is the work in progress and what is done. That's a really key thing. So understanding the flow of projects this way, that might be the right way to do it. Understanding the flow of projects where there may be a collection, but you want to see down into the inside, that might be a way to do it. Maybe you have these different kinds of projects, but you cannot evaluate or see the project portfolio unless you understand the flow of the work in your organization and somehow visualize it. Okay, is it okay if I go on?
Yeah, cool. No, that's good.
So we talked about what you might do for stages or preconditions. Let's talk about my favorite thing, the parking lot. So I talked about the parking lot, I believe, in the very first webinar where I talked about the flow, where you collect all the work, you make 1 of 3 decisions, where you either commit to the project, you have a cross-functional team that can do it, you transform the project, maybe it's a program, maybe it's not a project, and then you kill it. We need to get rid of the work we are not going to do in the organization. Now, so I'm binary, I'm happy with killing projects. Some of you are quite lovely people and you don't want to talk about killing, you want to talk about the parking lot. So the parking lot might be where projects go to die, and if they've been on the parking lot for a long period of time, so I made a different name for this project, but I have a client who has put something on the, luckily it was February 1st, not February 2nd. Yes, back in 2006. It's now 2017, 11 years later. If it was February 2nd, it would be Groundhog Day, right? And you've all seen the movie, right? So luckily it was February 1st. But it's 11 years. Why are they even thinking about this? Just don't do it, right? Take it off the parking lot, kill that thing. They cannot kill to save their lives, so the parking lot is really good for them. What they are doing now, they've evolved their parking lot so that they have the most recent things up at the top and the oldest things at the bottom. So by aging things out, they are actually not thinking about this.
Well, let me suggest one really positive thing from a parking lot, which may appeal to your binary nature. So when you're figuring out what work to do, you are trying to serve the business. And the problem is that the business isn't one person. The business is lots of different people with different opinions and different needs. And for your projects to actually work, you need the support of those people. They need your support as well, but you need the support of those people. And sometimes putting a project in the parking lot is a really good way of maintaining the goodwill and support of a particular stakeholder. Whereas if you killed it, you could just put the back up and have them turn off. Right? So the parking lot, the way I think of it is a valuable parking lot, right? It's somewhere where you can keep the ideas that in our next cycle, we're going to revisit them. But if you use a tool like Transparent Choice, actually what you tend to see is you have kind of usually end up with a fairly clear picture of, these are the projects we should do. These are the projects we really shouldn't do. Right? They're just lousy value for money. And it's really clear, and you can kill them safely. And by safely, I mean politically safely.
Right. It's safe for everybody to acknowledge we're not going to do this. Yes.
Exactly. And to do that rationally and not emotionally and all of that stuff. And then there is genuinely this group in the middle that were kind of near misses. And you know what, if we have a really good year and all the projects go really well, we may have some spare capacity, and it would make sense to maybe include one of the two of these things from the parking lot. If we, if 10 months in, we discover we've got some capacity. So there really is, there are a couple of really valuable uses. One is that slight buffer. But the other one, and it's really underestimated a lot, is that the parking lot is a great place to put that project that your VP of widgets is absolutely manically committed to doing, but just doesn't make sense in the portfolio. You put it in the parking lot and say, don't worry, we'll get to it next time. And it lets you move forward.
Yep. I found that pet projects, what you just talked about was a pet project. Absolutely. Those go into the parking lot. And because they're there, that makes everybody feel better. Yep, you're absolutely right. So I'm kind of an in-your-face person. You're a lot nicer.
Well, you're from Boston. What do you expect?
Exactly. You should see me drive. All right. Yeah, it's very funny. So these are ways.
What the viewers probably don't know is I lived in Boston for about 11 years, so I know exactly what she's talking about.
All right. So you've seen a number of ways to possibly visualize your work, right? There's the stages for the preconditions for the business case to say, yes, we even want to start this thing. There's what's happening at the top level, at the bottom level, in the teams, across the organization. You will have to figure out what makes sense for you to visualize your work, because every organization is different. And I do recommend that you have the higher level view so you can see projects, and the lower level view so you can see teams or, if necessary, people. Because otherwise you don't know the state of all of the work in the project portfolio. And I would like to repeat this. It does not matter how many projects you start. What matters is how many projects you finish and when. Right? That's the key.
Yeah. So, and the most powerful tool in achieving that, I would suggest, is the word no. Not doing stuff is the best way to make sure you finish things, not taking on too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to stay in touch with people. I have a chapter on how to say no and manage your project portfolio, increase your capacity, and finish more projects. I would love to link with people on LinkedIn, and I have a monthly newsletter that I would love it if people subscribe to. And I thank you, Stuart. This has been so much fun. We have really had fun on these 3 webinars.
We have. I've really enjoyed them. It's been a real pleasure. And it's always great to find someone who has taken a completely different journey through life and who has broadly come to the same conclusions that we have. That makes us feel good, at least. So, Johanna, thank you very much for sharing. And again, I encourage people to go back and look at the other 2 webinars if you haven't seen them. This is a very high level précis of the book Johanna just mentioned, Manage Your Project Portfolios. And I would recommend you go out and have a look at the book and really think about some of the concepts in there quite deeply. Now, of course, in spirit of, you don't get any points for starting a project, you only get points for finishing. You don't get any points, I'm afraid, for reading Johanna's book. You only get points when you implement ideas and make a difference. So go out, buy the book, read it. Don't just put it on your bedside cabinet and put a glass of water on top. That doesn't work. Read the thing and then figure out what you're going to do differently after you've read it. And it will make a difference to your professional and probably just to your general happiness and well-being. So thank you for watching. And we hope to see you again on another webinar soon.